is you have two files. You have a sound file and a visual file, and they can be disconnected by the buffering in your computer, and it's a waste of time. So you always record to the cloud. And now it's saying recording. Okay. All right. So this Jumping Worm grant has a high extension component in which we have to talk to people in the different industries, the nursery industry and the people who sell compost industry. And so our job is to find a management tool for jumping worms, but also educate people on how to identify jumping worms and methods they can try to do to keep jumping worms out of either nursery pots or the compost people out of compost. So we're trying to develop IPM programs for jumping worms. So then it comes to what is the regulatory position by the state agencies who regulate invasive species, which is jumping worms. And in our state, the DNR has become very proactive, and they already have listed jumping worms as invasive species, and they can't be moved or, sold. So in Minnesota, there's different levels of invasive species. There's eradicate. There's 4 different levels, and so you have to go figure out what level jumping worm management is at this point. So eradication would be that you find out you have jumping worms and you go kill them all. Well, they can't do that because they have no management tool. And so that's what we're supposed to come up with. All right. So the first thing in order for us to do short and long-term bioassays is to come up with a way to rear the 3 species, because we're always going to be working on red wigglers and European crawlers, because the people who work on making the pesticide labels are telling me that they can't label a product just for jumping worms. It's going to have to be earthworms in general. So we're going to have to, like I said, work on these 2 species, the red wigglers and European earthworms, which we can get from culture. So that makes it easy. People sell them and grow them. So you've got to tap their brain on how they're feeding them and how they're keeping them alive, because they're growing them. They're reproducing and they're growing them. And so we have a contact for that. And then the jumping worms, we just have been killing them. Every time we go collect them and bring them in the lab, they're dying. And we don't know why. We don't know if they release a chemical when they're stressed. Certainly in nature, they are in very high densities. But when you put them in a container and you would carry them and, catch them and everything, they seem to be giving off some chemical that then kills everybody. So we have to, that's something we have to do in the summer, but that's just a warning with the 80 worms you have. You can't put them together closely because it seems to kill them. So that's unknown right now. But again, what we're just talking about is how to maintain a colony, and so we can do bioassays. And so, okay, so then what are we going to bioassay? So we would do a chronic and a short-term bioassay, short-term being 4 days, chronic being 4 weeks. And then we would have to do non-target organisms in the soil. So you'd have to have a colony of sosids, we'd have to have a colony of staphylinids, a colony of bumblebees or something. And all these things you can buy. You can buy staphylinids, sosids, you just go dig up. So, we can buy caterpillar larvae from Carolina Biological and see if this affects us. These chemicals affect painted lady larvae. And then we have to see if they affect plants. So in the grant, we have hostas, which are very common in Minnesota, and we have another plant species like rose. So we not only have to do the bioassays on the target 3 species of earthworms, but then we have to do the non-targets on different soil inhabiting insects that we can get from colony or different plants. All right, so our end users of this information, we said this before, are the compost and the nursery industry, because eventually the DNR might want to regulate these as an invasive species, and then you have to have a management plan. So they can't put them at eradication, which is the highest level of an invasive species, because there's no way to eradicate them. So that's our job, to figure out how to eradicate them. So everybody has been just doing weird decision making and trying chemicals and microbial insecticides that kill insects, and there's no data that like Bavaria bassiana or anything is gonna kill an earthworm. And that's the direction other Minnesotan researchers have been going in. I'm much more focused. I talked to the EPA and the IR4 program who work with the EPA and getting pesticides registered. And they said, just as we try nematicides, because the nematicides, the soap, the saponin is in the nematicides, and it eats away the mucus level of nematodes. So it should do the same thing. And it penetrates the soil because it has to get down to the nematodes in the roots. So they suggested there are products. I will forward Greenma, or I think I did forward them to you already, but I'll forward them again. The labels, one's called Nematocure. There's a label for nematodes in pots. There's a label for nematodes in gardens. There's a label for nematodes in nursery production. And they're all different, but they all have the same thing. They have a saponin from the soap tree, Cahia saponaria, that grows in Chile. And so that is where we're going to start our bioassays to try to figure out if those bioassays registered for nematodes work on killing our two common species of worms, European earthworms and red wigglers. And then I said, once we get good information in midsummer when jumping worms are out, we could do jumping worms. So besides these 3 or 4 formulated nematicides that kill nematode products, there are other chemicals out there. So I was reading something from IR4 this week that there's a pathogen called Burkholdia, and it's been used to put on the phytoplankton, and it prevents fungi from sporulating and growing. And that one also, they say, is excellent to kill nematodes. So maybe that will kill jumping worms too. So that is my job, to try to work with the EPA and this IR4 program into understanding the protocols that we need to use to get the data that they will put earthworms on a pesticide label. And your job is to learn how to keep the worms alive, and when we come up with chemicals to bioassay them against, starting with the jumping worms, with the 2 species of worms we can cultivate, doing the jumping worms in the summer, and then looking at the non-target effects. So at this meeting, which you didn't really lose anything by not attending, Greenla, they wanted, so we told them that we were doing a online workshop. And now they've decided to do an online workshop, which is fine with me, because they're inviting me and like 4 other people. And we want to really center on the jumping worm researchers who have research papers. Okay, so we want to make a symposium anytime this spring. And so what we want to do is the 2 of you will make a list of all the jumping worm researchers. Then you send them an email. We want to do an online meeting. Can you give us a 30-minute talk? We will be there to in Zoom to copy your talk, to make a recording. You just have to give us, a PDF of your slides, and that we're going to put this on an online website, and that it's going to be available for people to take for any kind of IPM credit, for recertification, or for knowledge. So there's different vehicles they're forced to do IPM training through their commodity group that they get a license for, and from the pesticide license. So there's basic places we can get a listserv of people and send them that this workshop is available, and they're going to take it because they get credits for these attending. So we kind of have a capture audience ready. So our job is to create this online workshop and then video the person, then, make sure it looks good, put it in YouTube, and then YouTube is uploaded to our departmental website. And then that departmental website is uploaded to the university outreach website, where you post just a front page and said, here is an online workshop on jumping worms. It's available for these kind of different certifications for the nursery industry, the horticulture industry. And then you ask them to pay $10. And then it would say, and you get an IPM certificate at the end that you understand jumping worms and their management. And then they would go take the videos. We'll probably have to make a short quiz after every video. And then they would get their certificate after, maybe taking 8 talks. So that is our endpoint.
Yeah.
And that satisfies our grant because we're supposed to reach out to people. If we don't do this, the other option is us all going around giving talks and wasting 5 hours to drive somewhere, hang out, give a talk, drive home. This way,
It's better.
we can send people to the website. We don't have to travel as much. I mean, not to say we won't do some local talks, but it's gonna save us a lot of travel time. In order to do this, we need to make sure we have in the lab somebody who can post stuff on the web, and Sophia is supposedly doing that, but all of a sudden she stopped coming to work. So Grima, you have to meet Sophia and somehow get her interested. Because she's good, she posts all her stuff on the website, but I have not seen her for 3 years. So we have to figure out what happened to Sophia. And if she doesn't want to do it anymore, we have to go make a job announcement and try to find somebody who's gonna do this. So your jobs right now are to figure out how to get 3 species of earthworms, keep them alive.
Yeah.
And then to start organizing this online meeting. And so we need to meet, let's say, twice a week, where we make a list of the people you should contact, what to say to them. If you want, I can email them first. Sometimes it works better if I email them first and just explain to them what they're gonna get out of this. So we talked about the output in terms of our grant. Why would a person cooperate? What are we gonna give them? Well, we can give them for their Vita that they have an online educational website. And if they want, they can use it for their own students, whatever teaching they have. We're gonna also, what do we have for these people? We're gonna put them in contact with other researchers on a more intimate basis, so they have heard their research and know to reach out to somebody if they want to develop some methods or want some information. And the other thing that's really important is if we can somehow publish all this as a proceeding. And now that is more and more difficult to publish proceedings, but if this thing is good enough, we might be able to get it in some journal that deals with soil issues. I'm not gonna, until everything is done and we have, the online part, we have manuscripts done. We can always bundle them and put them on the website and people can download them as PDF. But it would be nice to get them accepted together as some kind of journal article. So that is basically what's in the grant for Grima, you to do and to work with somebody doing.
Yeah.
And, the outreach program, this, I think we will have less to do in the long run of running around giving talks and stuff than creating this website. And I already have a template. I've already done this. And if you go to the bottom of my name, there's a bunch of websites.
Yeah.
And if you then click on them, so I would just go here, me, and I go down here to my name and I click on this one that's called Greenhouse Nursery. Here is an online workshop that I've already done. So this is the educational material for the workshop. So we're gonna do the same thing. We'll post PDFs of the talk. We'll put a worm guide. We'll put Julie's tables on state regulatory. We can put references, papers on jumping worms. We can list here all different resources. And here's the class. I've already done it. So you just put it up here with you make a video, here's the PDF of the video, then you give them a quiz, and these are the additional resources, and then they would also link to that website. So this is the template of what we want to end up with like 7, 10, I don't know, as many researchers we can get. We don't want to make it longer than a half hour because we don't want to burden these people, but one of the 2 of you is going to have to work with them. It's really easy what I'm doing right now in Zoom. It's being recorded. In a few minutes, after we end, it will say to me, the
Time is.
It's done.
Yeah.
But remember, you have to download both the audio file and the video file. And then you just have to put it in YouTube. We have for the lab, we have a YouTube registration, and then you just link to it in here and it's all done. So that is the outreach for this proposal. It's not to say that we couldn't go give talks like, the nursery industry has an annual meeting, the mosquito industry has an annual meeting, the nursery and landscape, the compost, they all have annual meetings that we should go to and give a talk, but then send the people to the websites for information. So nowadays, people don't get paper handouts because they rarely read them and it costs a lot of money now to make. So everything is now put on the web and then they're supposed to go by their phone or go to their computer. So we're not gonna end up making anything out of paper. We're just trying to make everything electronic. So that is what we have to do on this grant, that we need to get started, because it's already March is coming up next week, and we really should have this workshop organized for this spring. And so I think to pick what people we're gonna invite, I'll have to work on that, on making a list and then, refining that list. And to do that, I have to go to this Cornell website where they have a jumping worm group, and I had just asked that this main website where we just had the Zoom meeting, if they know what Cornell is doing. They say Cornell is like inactive right now. So that's good for us in terms of workshop because nobody's doing anything. It's bad for us because maybe people lost interest in the research. So that is our ultimate goal right now. So Garima, you need to work with Julie on figuring out how to take care of all these worms, but also how to feed these jumping worms. And so they're all slowly dying. We had like 300, right? We had 300 in September. Then they died because they laid cocoons.
Mhm.
And then the cocoons are hatching, but I think they're hatching and dying because we don't know how to take care of them yet. And so I don't know how you capture that information because once a week, Julie is just counting who is there. So that can be ones that are over a week old, and that can be hatchlings too. So I don't know how you keep track, but just by the numbers, it's not stable, they're disappearing. So that needs some work to figure out why the jumping worms aren't thriving by having enough food and leaves. And I personally think it's if they don't have enough leaves. But we can't do anything about the jumping worms until next summer. Because
This is not the season of jumping worms, so they would die. Actually.
not in the lab. Outside they're in the cocoon stage.
Yeah.
They're gonna hatch in April. We can't tell juveniles apart very well, so we can only tell adults apart. So we would probably wait to do the jumping worm bioassays till they're adults in August and September. So if we could get a colony going in September, then we could do bioassays for a longer amount of time. So that's going to be your jobs, trying to figure out how to rear jumping worms and doing the bioassays. My job is to figure out what chemicals to do the bioassays on and to make sure I do the research in a way that can be used by the EPA and the IR4 program to register a chemical. So right now I'm looking at these TC meals from Camellia sinensis. I'm looking at this Cahia saponaria, which is where the two labels for nematodes. They get the active ingredient from not a camellia tree, but something called a soap tree, and its name is Cahia saponaria. And so right now you have 4 products registered under different names that use that extract. And I don't know if that's under a warrant patent. I don't think it is. No. I think the one that they actually took the TC meal and then they combined it and crushed it into a disposable granular, that they can get a patent because it's under a process. They had to squeeze them together, make them into like granular, like tea. But when we talked to Jim Connolly, who's the guy who originally worked with tea seed meal, and he owns the company that sells it. The tea seed meal, it seems that raw product has a chemical in it that the other products don't when they try to formulate it. And so it's up to me to work with the chemists at North Dakota to try to figure out what that compound is. And then we would take it and bioassay it.
But are these compounds are easily available? Are these inexpensive? Can the farmers buy these compounds?
Yes, it's in the pesticide, formulated as a pesticide, they just buy the pesticide. And they're not farmers, they're people who have more money. They're gonna be people who store compost and people who have nurseries. And they would be homeowners. So yes, if we can get this worms on any of those product labels that are now use the Cahia saponaria that are already labeled, we would just add earthworms to the label. That is easy. This other product we have, because that's from Cahia saponaria. The Camellia sinensis, the bag has been used for 100 years on golf courses to kill worms, but it hasn't been formulated into a pesticide. It's just still the raw material. And so we can't recommend it as a pesticide, even though it works, because it hasn't been registered through the EPA. And so that's going to be our job to figure out if we can get the data that, and it won't cost us $100,000 to get the data that they need to register. So that's where I just put in this grant for Procter and Gamble. It's in the works. It hasn't been refused. I put it on October 31st. And if we could get 150,000 from them, it would help us work on this saponin from the camellia. So right now there's a saponin from a camellia tree, and that's called Castaway. And then there is a saponin from the soap tree, Cahia saponaria in Chile. And that one is not formulated into any pesticide. And although it really works well, we can't recommend it because it's not formulated and registered as a pesticide.
There is one compound amamectin benzoate that is also a good nematicide compound.
So we're never going to use that because it's too toxic.
Yeah.
So there is a formula of it. So you have to remember everything we're going to do has to be something that a forester or a homeowner can use. So we're going to focus on these registered products that have caution labels, which means they have very low toxicity. Amamectin benzoate has a danger, so we can't use that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't use any product that isn't of the caution label.
So for comparing, like usually we do a compare with a conventional pesticide.
We're going to use carbaryl.
Carbaryl, okay.
Because carbaryl kills earthworm. But the nursery industry and the compost industry doesn't want any toxic,
Yeah.
like amamectin benzoate or like imidacloprid. They want to focus on these nematicides, which, so if I didn't forward it to you, I'm going to forward them both to you right now. I just sent them to Jim. So we have two collaborators out there, Garitama. We have Jim Calkins, who's with the nursery industry. And he's just difficult to deal with. He doesn't get anything done, but he's very arrogant, but he gets nothing done.
He loves to sound like he knows.
Yeah.
Which sometimes isn't a bad thing.
No, but it's irritating to us because he'll disappear and then come back and be demanding or do what we want for him. And then he disappears and forgets the progress we've made. He forgets everything. Like I sent this to him in September, and we have a conversation New Year's Eve. He has to talk to me on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, he never got it. Well, I know he got it because it says right here it went to him. So he's, I guess what I'm trying to say, we can't depend on Jim for anything. Our collaborator and the chemist is called Fathy Hollowish. And he's big time into this program. He thinks he can get a patent and make $1 million. Okay, we'll see. And he's at South Dakota. It's nice to have dreams. So here are the products here. This is the one from the tree, the phytochemical. That's now the company now. So Omex nematicide, that's just as facts. Here is the PDF of the label. So now Grima, they're doing weird things. They're taking the names of pesticides and they're putting it in the names of either the company or the product.
Okay.
So it's kind of getting weird. So you think this might be about neem, but it's
Yes.
not.
Oh,
This is about,
it is for nematicide. That is why
Right,
NAM is the name.
right.
Okay.
it's for Cahia saponaria, which are the saponins from this box tree of Chile.
Okay.
So this one is registered for vineyards, orchards, field, turf and ornamentals. So this could be for the nursery industry. It has a pot rate. And we are looking for things. So it's on golf courses, it's on sod farms, ornamental lawns. So anybody could use this.
Right.
And let's see, it's important for us to have a rate for pots. And one of these has a rate, yeah, containers. So this one is perfect for us if we can get earthworms on this label. So that's one. Just remember, this is this neem Omex.
NAM.
Oh, yeah, and then Carbaryl is here. That would be our positive check Green was asking about. And then there's Monterey nematode control. And that one is for, again, it's saponins of Cahia saponaria.
Okay.
And this one again is for vegetable crops and ornamentals and lawns. Okay,
They both are same?
they both are the same sites, yes. And they're from the same tree,
Yes, that's what
but they have different labels and this means it's organic. So that's what we wanted. That means it has an organic label. OMRI is Organic Materials Research Institute, and that's what labels things as organic. All right, so far we have two products. We have Monterey nematode control and we have neem Omex. Okay, the next product is this Castaway. And so this Castaway dispersible granulars, they make this to look like an EPA label, but it is not. And this is the one where they formulated it into this, it's called a disposable granular, this DG technology. And we're being told by the other guy who works on this that he doesn't think this is as toxic. So by making it into this DG, maybe they used a solvent, maybe they leached out the toxicity. So this is one product. Look at this, 1% nitrogen, has nothing else in it.
Okay.
So people are never going to buy it. You can't sell it that it's for earthworms because it hasn't been registered by the EPA. So you have to tell people that register it as a soil amendment. And nobody has the money for that. So, oh, that didn't work. So I know I talk a lot and I have a lot to say, and it's very easy to forget, but just work with me on this. So all right, so here's our, it lists better here. Where's our little email now? Here, okay. So Castaway DG is by the Andersons. It's a dispersible granular. The original Castaway, okay, is by Planet Turf. And they just call it tea seed meal. And this one hasn't been processed. And the guy who runs this company tells us that this is the best product to use because the jumping worms come to the surface. So we have two plants we're working with, Cahia saponaria and Camellia sinensis. The Omex, the neem Omexes are the, right, and the castaways are the Camellia. And the Camellia do not have any kind of pesticide label, but the saponins from Cahia saponaria, they do have that label and this other, they have the two labels we were looking at, Monterey and then Nemex. And then Carbaryl's here because that's our control. Yeah. And then this is just tells you about saponins, and this is the one that supposedly works really well that isn't formulated, and this is the one the guy tells us is maybe not as good because it's in these DGs,
Okay.
okay? And then let's see here, I just have a PDF about Pahia saponaria, what it is, how they get the saponins out of it.
Mhm.
So these saponins are found, this was in the vaccine, the COVID vaccine.
Oh,
They're used in all, because it's it's a dispersant, and so the molecules get evenly dispersed in the solution, so it's a soap.
yeah,
And it's used in a lot of different things. It's used in makeup, it's used to clean floors. It's used in vaccines, again, to keep the particles all the same size. So it is registered as a human grade food additive. So
Yeah.
that's what we want, because and it also has the labels, the OMRI, the Organic Materials Research Institute labels, which means it's non-toxic. So let's see, let me send this before we're not gonna do the Zoom meeting. I'm gonna close Zoom down here. But this one, I've sent it to everyone here.
exit meeting.
Oh, thank you.